Okay, so I know it's been a while, but welcome back to my Porsche 914 restoration project series. And when I say it's been a while, my poor little Porsche 914 has been outside for about a year now. And there's a good reason for that. So I've only got the one ramp, if you like, in my garage. And other projects came along. Something urgent came along that meant I needed to get the Porsche out onto the driveway. And then once it was covered and out there, then the next thing came along and the next. And I'm sure we've all been there. But I'm going to remedy that today. So without further ado, let's get that garage door open and then we can see what's been going on with my poor little Porsche 914. Okay, so here it is, and it's looking rather sad out there in the rain and under a tree. So I did put a car cover over it because I suspected it might be out for at least a little while. But as you can see, with all the stuff that's been falling off of the tree and obviously the awful weather, then the cover's long since rotted away. Now I did realise this was happening, so I put some sheeting under the cover, but some bad weather did get to it before I did that, so I'm just hoping it's not in a really awful condition under there. But there's no point putting it off any longer. I just need to get this cover off, see what condition the car's in, and then get it in the garage where it's at least safe and sound and I can start working on it. You know, things are bad when you decide to take the car cover off, but you go in the house for your rubber gloves first. Anyway, I know it's going to be a messy job, but let's get to it. Oh man, that cover was horrible. And it weighed a ton because it's all sodden and covered with soil and all sorts of other stuff. But the good news is the sheeting that I had underneath seems to have done a good job. And I think the best thing I can do is just blast it down with the hose before I try to get the sheeting off and uncover the car. So there's nothing really holding that sheeting on because the elastic on the car cover was holding it in place. So I just popped my head in through that gap and it's a lot drier in there than I had any right to expect. So I'm not going to uncover it anymore because it's still really nasty and rainy out. And the last thing I want is for it to get all wet. There's still quite a lot of bare metal in there. And if it survived this long, it'd be a shame, you know, to get it wet inside there just for the sake of a couple of minutes. You know, I've definitely picked a good day for this. But I don't want to delay any longer because, you know, once you decide to do something and you've been putting it off, then you have to go with it. Honestly, I've had a bit of fun in games. So I have an electric winch for doing this sort of job, you know, getting non-running cars in and out of the garage. But as you saw, the remote control had gone flat. So now I'm on my backup plan, which is this manual winch, which is what I used to do before I got the electric one. I've used this one more than the electric one because there always seems to be some kind of problem. Anyway, it probably looks a bit rough because I'm just anchored to the electric winch there. I just needed something that I could clip onto. And if we follow this along, I've had to extend the cables with this bit of rope, and then I have my towing straps and they're hooked up to the car. And I normally wouldn't go with this sort of setup, but there's no engine in that car and it's only small and light to start with. In fact, maybe I should have had a go at pushing it in. But we've got it set up now. So I might as well have a go at hand winching it and you guys can have a little bit of fun at my expense. So I've just got my leather gloves on because these cables can be evil things, you know, if there's like a little piece of it sticking out or something, and there's lots of places to trap your hands in here. There's a bit more tension now, it's coming up onto the ramp. So there you have it, it's been a bit of a mission on a really awful day. But it's in the garage and I'm going to take great pleasure in dragging that plastic off. And the good news is, apart from some leaves that had gotten in, the car was pretty much exactly as I left it. Okay, so now that I've got the Porsche 914 back in the garage, I can finally start tackling some of this rust damage. And so if you've got one of these cars, you'll recognise this is the passenger side longitudinal, so the rear wheels here. And it extends up past this point where the suspension mount, and this is the jacking point. Now, this is the outer long here, and there's also an inner one. There's like a little bit of a seam at the bottom, pinch weld I think you call it, and that fastens the two clamshell pieces together. Now you can buy this piece from Restoration Design and from other places, but you can kind of see the jacking point here, and that goes over that, and so you can see what a big piece it is. You know, it extends right up in there. And it also, with this piece here, it extends up round this curve a little bit and then goes up at an angle, and I've tried to mark approximately where I think it's going to go, because as you can see I've got some damage here and I'm hoping this part's going to cover that as well. Actually, not cover it, I meant replace it. And so I'm not going to use all of this piece. Whenever you get a patch panel, you kind of use the bit that you know that you need. But I don't want to chop it off and then find out I need more. And I don't really have good enough access to see exactly what's going on behind here, but I'm hoping that it's solid up to this jacking point. I meant suspension mount. It becomes a much bigger job if you have to start trying to remove that. But it is doable, you know, so I'll just see what I find. But what I'm going to start by doing is cutting a much bigger inspection hole. And then once I've got that access, I'll be able to see how much of this needs to come out. Even up here you can see the patch panel's got some of this shape, so I can extend all the way up there if I want, as long as I can get into weld. And of course you can see that this rear quarter panel, or rear fender as they call it in the North America, I've cut that piece off already and I'll weld that back in later. A lot of people don't like to do this, but if you don't, you can't see how much damage there is and you can't weld the new piece in as well as you'd like to. Yeah, so my dad and I have been doing a little bit more work on the Porsche 914. We've done about, I don't know, 6, 7 or 8 hours work, and it'll be just a quick couple of minutes update on a patch that we've put in and a bit of added strength that we've put on. So here's the issue that we were running into. So I have a new outer longitudinal which will cover all this area, but as soon as we welded that on, it was going to get really awkward to get to this bottom of the inner longitudinal, which was all rotted. So we needed to do that first. But if we cut that out, and then there's a little bit of rust on the top as well, then you just have no strength left. So you kind of end up being a little bit chicken and egg. So what we did is, from a piece of angle iron, and you can see we've tack welded it in, and we had to cut it so that we could bend it. and get it fitted in place. This is given some added strength to the long. And then also we've chosen where we support with the jack and then the wheel, so that hopefully there's just not too much weight in this area compared to when it was only supported by the wheel at the back, and then of course the other one at the front. But anyway, this is the first significant patch that we've done on the structural part of the 914 on the whole job so far, so obviously a lot more to go. But this is the piece that was in this corner. I've hammered it flat so that I could use it as a template, but it was bent slightly. In fact, it's so thin it's easy to bend back how it was. Oops, wrong way up. Okay, so it was something like that. And now this right angle here, and you can see it runs all the way along here now, the outer long, the new piece, has to have that for welding to, you see. So you can see what a mess it was. And then also there were holes in and all the rest. So this is the patch that we made. So I just bought some 2mm and then we hammered it in the vise and shaped it. And we had to cut some splits in it, which allowed us to bend it to get it how we wanted, which of course now they've been welded up. And so that will have given quite a lot of strength back to this box section now. The battery was always up above this in the engine bay, and I've cut this out because the outer longitudinal also has that piece there, so it'll cover it all in. But at the moment I have really good access to this here. So this is the inner long again. And up here, it's probably solid, but I'll have to flap wheel that back in order to find out. But then going down here, as you can see, you know, it's rotted away. And so what I'm thinking is that a top piece, depending on how far I need to go with it. And if we look inside, this comes inside the passenger behind the seat. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so that's the bulkhead behind the passenger seat, so that'll need some work. But I'm just concentrating on the inner longitudinal at the moment. So this top piece, maybe down to here, which comes through the firewall from the engine bay. I just want to sort that out. Let's go jump inside the engine bay and we can look from the other side, and I'll explain about this panel, which is a pattern piece that I bought and where that goes. Okay, so let's get ducked under. There we go, so this is the engine bay now, and looking to the outside where we were just a minute ago. And you can see this pattern part that I've got here. That goes down into that corner. And there's a seal, a rubber seal, which has to do with, you know, the engine air-cooled aspect of it. Don't really know that much about it, but I know that you need that seal. So you can see that's quite a nice piece to weld back in after a bit. But I don't want to do it until I've repaired the top of this inner long, because as you can see it overlaps onto it. So let's get that piece out of the way. Okay, so we can see a lot more about what we're going to do now. So I'll just start cleaning all this up, and you can see somebody's put some sealant or whatever this is. And I'll start taking that back, and I'll wire wheel all this, and we'll just see where it's thin and rotted. I have a feeling we're going to have to make a patch panel to run from quite high up all the way down here, and then, as I mentioned, just through the bulkhead into the passenger compartment. As you can see, plans changed and I started to patch the firewall instead. And that's because the inner long needed the outer to be there in order to give a datum point about how big to make the patch, etc. I'll come back to that later, but anyway, some good work was going on here. So as you can see, we've got a few patches in there now, and there was another area you can see just here a little bit further along that we also did. It looks a bit like Frankenstein, but at least it's not all full of holes and all rusty, it's solid metal again. And this other area above the longitudinal, we haven't patched that yet, but we are going to come to it soon. Okay, so that's it for this episode of the Porsche restoration project. I'm going to leave that little top part of the longitudinal to another time. I really want to get floor pans in now. The whole time I've had the car, it hasn't had a floor in it, so it'll feel like a really big milestone for me to get it done. And also it'll give a lot of strength to the car, and then finally I can tackle the outer longitudinal, that big panel, get it in. So it's all coming up in the next episode. So if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more, please subscribe, and maybe I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.